Welcome back to the Scaredy Cat Guide, my friends. My name is Jenny, and today we are talking about Expedition Everest in Disney's Animal Kingdom. If you're new here, this is the channel where we talk about Disney and anxiety, we talk about sensory issues, and really just anything that you might want to know if you're an anxious rider at Disney World. Just like me. Now, while overall I would not call this attraction a super intense coaster, especially when it comes to other big coasters in other parks, Expedition Everest is one of my favorite coasters in Disney World. It has so many interesting elements that really set it apart from all the other thrill rides in Walt Disney World. So without further ado, let's dive into those details. This journey through the Himalayas contains high speeds, some backwards maneuvers, and, of course, as a coaster, its fair share of twists, turns, and drops. On top of that, this attraction also contains some intimidating heights, some darkness and spooky theming, and a very large and very scary Yeti animatronic. So let's start off by talking about those thrill elements. Now, you will of course, as I said, have quite a few twists, turns, drops, that sort of thing. These are going to be elements that will be familiar to you if you have ridden other Disney coasters like Thunder Mountain or Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. I'll tell you right up front that this coaster does not go upside down, it doesn't have any inversions or launches or anything like that that really make it stand out, but you still will reach a top speed of 50 miles per hour. To put that into perspective, this is one of the faster roller coasters in Disney World, definitely coming in faster than Slinky Dog Dash, Big Thunder Mountain, Mine Train, and Space Mountain. However, it is slower than some of the newer attractions like Cosmic Rewind or Tron Light Cycle Run. So even though this has a pretty standard speed for a roller coaster, that's really not what makes this attraction intense. Now, while you will be going 50 miles an hour when you're traveling forward, you also will have some backwards maneuvers and be traveling backwards at a speed of 30 miles an hour. Now, this might not sound super intense because, of course, it is 20 miles an hour slower than you were traveling forward, but because you're going backwards, it can definitely up that intensity factor. Now, this backwards portion lasts for approximately 20 seconds, and it also involves a maneuver called a backwards helix. Now, if you've never heard of this before, I do not blame you. Basically, all it is an inverted drop, where basically instead of going down, you're going upwards instead. So in the case for Expedition Everest, you are traveling backwards at 30 miles an hour, and suddenly you will feel yourself being yanked upwards. I've actually heard a lot of people say that they think you go upside down on Expedition Everest, and it's because of this section. I can definitely understand this feeling like an inversion, and because you're in the dark, there's really no way of you knowing that you're actually just going up a backwards helix instead. It definitely will give you that stomach in your throat feeling, it definitely feels intense, but if it puts you at ease at all, you are not going upside down, you're not going down a drop, you're actually just being yanked upwards. So let's talk about that actual drop on this attraction. You can see this drop from the front of the ride. In fact, you've probably seen it just walking up to Expedition Everest, whether you decided to ride or not. And this drop is a pretty staggering 80 feet tall. Again, to put that into perspective, that actually puts it at 30 feet higher than the drop at Tiana. So it definitely is one of the larger, steepest, tallest drops in all of Walt Disney World. Now, while we're talking about drops, another thing that I will definitely mention here is that if you have a thing for heights, this is an attraction to look out for. Because this is an outdoor coaster and incredibly themed to the Himalayan mountains, you not only feel like you are towering high above everyone else in Animal Kingdom, but you actually are over 100 feet in the air for most of this attraction. Now, the lift that you see from the front of the ride that actually gets you up the mountain is 112 feet high. On top of that, there are several moments where you actually come to a full stop on the coaster while the track is changing. Like I said before, you do have that backwards motion, and the track is going to have to shift and move in order for you to change direction. So while the track is changing, you are stopped for about 10 seconds each. Now, one of these you are outside for, and if you're sitting at the front of the train specifically, you have got a crazy, amazing, but pretty terrifying view of the rest of Disney property. You can actually see some of the other parks from here, and definitely could be a little intimidating if you have a fear of heights. Now, really quickly, I would love to touch on some of that kind of spooky, scary theming here. Now, while this attraction isn't necessarily full-on Haunted Mansion, Tower of Terror levels of spooky, you definitely have some kind of ominous theming, some spooky sound design throughout this attraction. This theming really puts you right in the middle of the action. You really feel like you're there in the Himalayas, about to climb this mountain and potentially come face to face with this legendary and kind of scary Yeti. So throughout the queue, you'll have a few moments that are kind of teasing at this potential run-in with the Yeti, which, spoiler alert, you do in the ride's runtime. And while most of the queue is kind of informational, it feels kind of like a museum, there are definitely some exhibits in this area that maybe can be a little bit spooky. Now, this isn't right in your face or anything like that. You just have like maybe a few pictures of the Yeti or this giant footprint or things that definitely kind of ramp you up, get you excited to meet this legendary monster. Now, when you're on the actual ride, you of course have some of that spooky sound design, some distant roars, some creaking, and some wind howling, things of that nature. But definitely the most scary, spookiest part of this attraction is the Yeti himself. Now, if you're riding Expedition Everest, you probably already know that there is a very famous, massive Yeti animatronic on this attraction. Now, he, of course, has kind of become a famous character in Disney parks lore. He is a very impressive 25 feet tall, so I am not kidding when I say he is absolutely massive. He's very lifelike, very scary, but he is no longer in motion. You may have heard people refer to him as the Disco Yeti because really all that he is now is this static Yeti with some strobe lights kind of flashing across him. And while he's not moving and definitely not at the height of his scariness like he was right when the ride opened, he's definitely still a force to be reckoned with. He's still pretty scary, even if you only get little glimpses as the strobe lights flash. And the way that the coaster is laid out really makes you feel like you are close enough to touch him. Of course, this is really only an illusion. You could never reach out and touch him. You're not anywhere close enough to do that, but he really does feel like he is up in your face, even for those just couple of seconds that you experience going right past him. Now, finally, let's jump into talking about those ride vehicles. Now, this is a pretty standard coaster featuring a 6-car train, seating 4 riders in 2 rows of 2. Now, I'll make a note here that, like with most coasters, if you sit at the back of the train, you definitely will have a bit more thrilling of an experience. If you sit at the front, that drop is not going to feel quite as intense. You don't feel like you're whipped around quite as much as you do when you're sitting towards the back of the train. So if that's something that's important to you, you of course can ask a cast member if they are able to seat you at the front or back of the train, just according to what kind of experience you might want to have. Now, when it comes to ride restraints, you have individual lap bars here. It's very similar to many other attractions in Walt Disney World, and to me, because there's no overhead harness or any type of element like that, it doesn't feel particularly claustrophobic. And speaking of claustrophobia, let's talk about that ride time. Now, this attraction is actually very short, clocking it at only 2 minutes and 50 seconds. It really is a very efficient little coaster, and you are on and off of it before you know it. Now, if anything is claustrophobic on this attraction, I would have to say it's got to be that slow lift up to the mountain. This lift not only can be triggering for those of you who may have a fear of heights, but it's also pretty intimidating just to be slowly rising to the top of the mountain here. If you're claustrophobic like me, it's moments like this that can make me feel kind of antsy. And of course, like I said before, you also have 2 stops later in the ride where the track is changing, where you are at a standstill for about 10 seconds each. This doesn't seem like a long time on paper, but it can definitely feel a little unnerving if you don't know that it's coming. And now that you have all the facts, let's actually go ride this thing. I am so excited. Like I said, this is one of my favorite coasters of all time, so let's go hop in line. You'll find the entrance to this attraction in the Asia section of Animal Kingdom. Once you enter the line, you will start off by entering this small little room that has some amazing props and theming that really gets you into the vibe of this attraction. Now, don't be deceived, even though it looks like you're entering an indoor section, most of this attraction's queue is outside. And of course, I was here filming on a very hot summer day, so let me just tell you up front, the queue to this attraction is a hot one, so be prepared for that. After walking through this short little room, you'll find yourself back outside into this lovely courtyard area. I honestly could gush about the theming in this attraction's queue all day. It is incredible. It is beautiful. It is so detailed. So honestly, even though you might be standing there waiting for quite a long time, you honestly will never run out of things to look at. You'll wind your way around this courtyard and step through a few other covered areas where you might have a little bit of a break from the sun. Of course, there are also some fans scattered throughout this queue, which is definitely helpful, but as we all know, it can still be incredibly hot even with the help of the fans. And eventually you'll find your way out in this kind of wooded area where the line will just wind back and forth outside. There's not a ton of theming in this particular area, but you won't be out here for too terribly long. Now, once this segment comes to an end, you'll pass some water fountains and finally make your way into the indoor section of the queue. You'll find yourself in another little outpost area where you'll see some rations and camping supplies, some more just excellent gratuitous theming. And after you pass through this room, you'll end up in this very cool kind of museum section. There are all these very cool artifacts and exhibits where you get to kind of get introduced to the Yeti that you may encounter on your adventure. There are so many things to look at, so many things to read, and honestly, I have never gone through this section without wishing that I had more time to spend here. After making your way through this museum area, you will find yourself in this little transitional section where you can actually see the loading platform. From here, the line moves pretty quickly, and before you know it, you will be stepping onto that platform and making your way to a cast member. Now, like with many attractions, you can see the train from here in the ride vehicle, so it's a great opportunity to take a look, see if this is something that you are comfortable with. And of course, like with every other attraction, you can always tell a cast member that you changed your mind, or maybe you're not ready to ride that day, and they will point you the direction you need to go, and you can wait for the rest of your party at the end of the attraction. Once hopping on board, you will pull down your lap bar and the train will set off into the mountain. You'll actually twist and turn around this little area before coming upon the lift, and it's kind of a psych out moment where you think the coaster is getting going, the train picks up speed, but you don't really have any crazy maneuvers before you go up this lift. Now, this lift, as I said before, is pretty intimidating. It's slow pace combined with the super high intimidating heights and the spooky theming. That little covered area that you go through is kind of like a shrine to the Yeti, and there's some kind of spooky imagery, some spooky sound design that really gets you ready for the vibe of this attraction. However, when you're at the top of the lift, the actual ride can commence. Again, the train picks up speed but doesn't do anything too crazy as you come upon the broken tracks. The train will come to a stop here. You'll hear some roars in the distance, signaling that the Yeti is maybe closer than he appears, and before you know it, after about 10 seconds, the train will proceed backwards. Now again, this backwards section goes about 30 miles an hour, which of course doesn't sound that intense, but it definitely can feel it. You'll hit that backwards helix, which definitely is super thrilling, but before you know it, the train will come to a stop again. You'll see this projection of the Yeti's shadow where he's ripping up the tracks in front of you, and this is where you'll know that the big drop is coming. After the Yeti tears up the track, the train will start moving forward again, and you will plummet down this 80-foot drop in front of Mount Everest. After this drop, the coaster really picks up speed, and you have just a pretty classic coaster's worth of twists and turns, that sort of thing. Nothing too crazy or different from other coasters that you've probably ridden in Walt Disney World. And towards the end of this track, you will fly back up into the mountain. It will be dark all around you, and you will see those flashing strobing lights. And if you look up, you'll see the massive Disco Yeti right in front of you. He roars, and even though he's not moving, it really kind of can look like it if you kind of squint and just use your imagination. You'll fly past him in your coaster, and after that, you'll suddenly find yourself right back at the loading station and ready to disembark. Now, after unloading from the train, you will find yourself at the photo area. From here, you'll just make your way through the gift shop, which I always take a moment to look around because I really enjoy it personally. And from there, you'll just walk right out the door and end up back in the Asia section in Animal Kingdom. And there you have it. What do you think about Expedition Everest? This is a ride that I could just do over and over and over again. To me, it has the perfect amount of thrill. I personally like roller coasters and I like those kind of thrill elements, but this one is innovative, it's different, but it's not crazy intense and something that I feel like I could do just on repeat. Now, that is not to say that it's for everyone. This coaster definitely has some intense elements, and I could for sure see where it would be too much for some people. Real quick, I wanted to give a shout out to Attraction 360 360 for once again allowing us to use your footage. My camera unfortunately cannot withstand those high speeds and close Yeti encounters. So thank you so much for allowing us to get a great view of this ride system in the actual attraction, so you guys know exactly what to expect here. Now, as always, if you liked this video and you would like to see more ride reviews like it, don't forget to like, subscribe, stick around, stay a while. We would love to have you in our little community of anxious riders. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.
On it, hair went flying everywhere.
Yeah?
I think I bit some girl's hair.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But awesome.
It's
awesome.
serious business.
Really
I'm glad you enjoyed it, Zachary. Thank you.